We have to have a government that doesn't lead us and control us by fear. Yes.
We don't make good decisions when we're afraid, ever.
We don't.
And that was part of the women's suffrage, the opposition, to make people afraid of what this is going to lead to. It's pretty 140 years worth of effectiveness. Dulcie?
I'm sorry, since I came in late. You already covered this, tell me. But could you expand, you kind of alluded to prohibition, but could you expand on the relationship between women's suffrage and the prohibition movement?
I'm so not a fan of the prohibition movement.
But a fan of women's
So
suffrage.
women have been so involved in the reform. I mean, if we look back in the 19th century, there were ties to their homes. I mean, middle-class women, working-class women are looking around how much money is being spent on alcohol and the detrimental effects that this could lead to in the homes. And they're looking at domestic violence, wages lost, their children in need of things. And it seemed like a natural extension of women's rights. That was used to prevent women's voting rights, though, because, oh my God, if we give them the right to vote, they're going to get rid of our alcohol. Does anyone know what amendment prohibited alcohol? The 18th, and women got the 19th, so we didn't actually do it. Before women had the right to vote, prohibition beat women's suffrage, but there was always that fear. The alcohol industry, especially the hard alcohol industry, worked really hard to prevent women's suffrage, and they had the money and the resources to block it, and they were a pretty effective lobbying group. There were men in the suffrage, or in the prohibition movement too, but women were definitely the leaders. I mean, just going back to the Women's Christian Temperance Union too, specifically.
Is them throwing us a bone?
Is what throwing us?
Do you think passing temperance was throwing women a bone?
I think passing prohibition was a way to control lower class individuals.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
And
all about
immigrants.
controlling poor and
Yeah.
immigrant classes.
Yeah. And it didn't work. So, yeah. But, yeah.
I'm thinking perhaps that sometimes people believe in myths that feed their comfort. Now we use the phrase, your comfort zone. But there are various myths throughout time that people cling to. And maybe one of them is that the leader always has to be male, or that if women get too big a share of the pie, well, there won't be enough zero sum.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you too, Teddy Roosevelt said, I can either run the country or I can manage Alice.
But he was talking about his daughter.
Yes.
Right. Okay, making sure I was like, even. So Teddy, I'll just give you this tidbit. TR is a weird person, and he's complex. There's a lot of things that have got issues. He was an early feminist. He actually wrote his thesis on feminism and women's rights, encouraging women, for example, if they married a man to not take his last name. And he adopted women's suffrage into his platform in 1912. Some of that was political, and it didn't work. I mean, he lost to Wilson. So he's fun to look at for women's rights. And in his defense, Alice Roosevelt was a handful. I've read the biography. She seems fun. Any other questions?
So, I'd like to give a comment on this. While I'm horrified at the outcome of the most recent national election, there's a part of me that's really marveling at the fact that Hillary got 2 million more votes.
2.9, I believe.
Almost 2 million more votes. So that says that there are a lot of people in this country, more than half of the people who voted had confidence that a woman could run the country, could run our government. So could you comment on that? I mean, there's something really positive about noticing.
There is. I'm thinking through this nonpartisan event. How I'm phrasing. It's a slippery slope for me, I'll say. I think some notable things that came out of that election is how the votes fell. Who did vote for our first major female candidate and who did not. she got the minority vote. White, college-educated women were not her biggest supporters. And I think that's a telling aspect for the racial divides going into that election. So while I'm cheered at the confidence for having a woman president, I think that we can look at, intersectionality didn't work how we thought that it would. Is that as non-political as I can get? Did that answer it?
There were a lot of men who voted for it.
There were. Yeah. I think a lot of it came down to race. And yeah. I'm still excited for what it means for, my own children. They see women in leadership positions, and they see a woman going almost to the highest level in the United States, decades and decades after other industrialized nations, but it's 2017. I'm gonna just stop there. We can chat later. They'll see.
So I had this interesting conversation with somebody yesterday. This is nearly 100 years after the first woman was elected to a federal representative position.
Mhm.
Jeanette Rankin is elected in Montana in 1916, 1917, something.
Yeah.
She's there to vote on going into World War I. I know that.
But she does
So-
not.
And she votes against it. So she feeds into all these female stereotypes about how we're pacifists and we can't get on board with war and we're gonna be the bane of Congressman's existence. So you see all this progress, especially in Western states, during the first to second decade of the 20th century, and then you see this dearth of female participation. And I don't know what explains that. I don't know if it's because in the West we don't have formalized systems of community in the same way, like things are kind of nebulous in Western states. And so women can have the vote because we don't have that many people and it's okay. And the more that communities become codified in the way that we expect them to be, like they are back east, the harder it is for women to participate. And then you see this enormous stretch of time when women aren't participating in Montana or Idaho or Washington or wherever the case may be. And then you see that they have to start really clawing their way back into it in the 80s and 90s. And I don't know if you have any better explanation than that. I mean, I haven't read up on it a lot, but that seems to me like there's an opportunity to participate because everything's kind of in flux in this early period.
But then when they do, women in leadership positions are held to very different standards, and the critiques are very different. Jeanette Rankin is critiqued for voting against the war. So did some men, but she's held up, a woman did this, so women do this. It's just, painting with as broad a brush as you want. Whereas the men who didn't vote for it, it wasn't, why don't all men? It's, if one woman does it, suddenly she's the spokesperson for all women. Like we're all that simplified, or easily simplified. And that's, that was my fear, that this last year would actually dissuade women from running for office. I think we're seeing the opposite, so maybe we're moving ahead. But that is challenging. The different critiques, you're gonna ruin your home, you're gonna ruin your family, you're gonna ruin society. I can see why, and we did, in the 50s, we had some women in political offices, which I find really interesting. It's just not when we would expect. Some pretty powerful women, actually, too. But I think it's that level of deterrence as we, this happens, now we need to be more rigid in how we define gender roles. Okay, you've got the right to vote, but let's be clear what women are still supposed to do. And I think we saw that in the 20s. And then everything's up in the air for the next few decades, the Depression and the war. Stop asking hard questions, Dulcie. Deborah, did you have a question? Oh, good. My daughter's advocating for violence. Okay, we'll just move on. Are there any other questions? I think you had your shot, my dear.
I have a question.
You can ask me, we have a whole car ride together. So I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, for supporting me.